Hi, and welcome to the launch of Sustainable Brand Index 2024 in Norway. My name is Erik Elvingsson Idén. I am the CEO of SB Insight and the founder of Sustainable Brand Index. I will guide you through this webinar full of insights about sustainability, brands, and consumers. Before we get into the specifics about the results from Sustainable Brand Index 2024, I want to share some things about our company. SB Insight is an insight agency, obviously, focusing on sustainability. We cover sustainability from a brand, communications, and business development perspective. And we help brands and companies all over the place to understand how is sustainability affecting us, our brand, our consumers, and our ability to communicate with them. We have been doing this for a long time now. We started out in Sweden back in 2011. Then 2 years later, we went into the Norwegian market, the Danish market, and the Finnish market. In 2017, we expanded into the Netherlands as well. And then since 2020, we're also in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. So all in all, 8 markets today. Sustainable Brand Index is today Europe's largest independent brand study on sustainability. We're very proud of that. And every year we interview more than 80,000 respondents about how they perceive more than 1,600 brands in these markets. So, how do we do it? How do we perform Sustainable Brand Index? That's a very good question. Let me walk you through the 4 stages of it. Number 1, desk research. We put a massive amount of time every year into looking around us, basically. What is happening in the market? What are key developments that we see? Economy, politics, social trends, etc. And of course, what are the sustainability topics that we see emerging among consumers and in society in general? So this is a lot of work just looking around us and gathering that. And this is super important input that goes into the web surveys that we perform in the later stages. Stage number 2. Web survey number 1. This is where we take all the insights and the results from the desk research stage and we put into a web survey where we want to interview consumers. We work with Norstat as our main supplier of consumer respondents. We access their panels and we ask our questions basically. And web survey number 1 is very much about 2 things. It's brand assessments, what do people think about the brands from a sustainability perspective, and also some overarching consumer indicators regarding sustainability attitudes and sustainability behaviors. Stage number 3, web survey number 2. Having done web survey number 1, we collect the data, we look at it, we analyze it, and we see, maybe there are things here we want to examine further. If so, we put that into web survey number 2. On top of that, we also look at the in-depth perspective for each brand. So we analyze, or rather we interview consumers about between 25 to 30 different areas for the brand. What are the key drivers behind the perception of the specific brand when it comes to sustainability? Stage number 4, last but not least, turning data into insights. This is really the most important part, according to me. This is where we take the data from web survey 1 and web survey 2 and of course combine it with 14 years of having performed Sustainable Brand Index. So the amount of data is vast. And now we have to make sense of it, and this is what we do. And one part of that is really generating insights that we're going to share today in this webinar. And the other part is really tailored insights relevant for the brands on the list that we provide to them. What is the purpose of Sustainable Brand Index? This is a very important question to ask yourself. Luckily, this is something we clearly defined back in 2011 when we launched it. The purpose of Sustainable Brand Index is to drive the agenda within sustainability and really visualize the value of sustainable branding. And by doing this, we see that we can increase the knowledge among different stakeholders about sustainability. And this is something that is super important today. One of the reasons that we started Sustainable Brand Index was this perspective that you can see here, the sustainable perspective, as we call it. What it shows is really that sustainability has gone from yesterday being clearly detached from the brand and irrelevant, to be honest, to actually integrating more and more into the brand. And by integrating, I mean that this is a huge part of what people look at, what consumers value when they assess a brand and choose a brand. Hopefully, and what we're aiming for here is really that tomorrow, in the future, we're going to have a market that consists of only sustainable brands. It's going to be mandatory, and then we're going to stop talking about brands and sustainable brands because they're all going to be sustainable. Before we go into the insights for the Norwegian market, just a quick look at the numbers for the data collection in Norway. So this year we interviewed 13,000 Norwegian consumers, respondents between 16 and 75 years. And all in all, for the Norwegian market, we had them assess 282 brands within 25 different industries. What we're seeing here is the share of Norwegian consumers discussing sustainability with friends and family on a regular basis. And I've mentioned this before in previous years, but we do see a positive trend over time. Back in 2013, only 37% claimed to talk about sustainability, and now we're up at 58%. So we've definitely seen a long-term positive trend. What is interesting this year, and looking at the trend over the past 3-4 years, is actually that sustainability really holds its ground, because as you all know, we're in a situation, we're in a market, there's a lot of worry, there's a lot of war going on around the world, there's a lot of worry around the economy, the personal finances, etc. And as you can see here, sustainability is really not moving. The interest is there. So I would argue, and we would argue at SB Insight, that sustainability is really the new normal, so to speak. It's been integrated into the conversations among consumers, and this is super positive. Of course, very interesting to look at what people talk about. Here are the top topics that people, Norwegians, talk about regarding sustainability. Of course, it's something that they define themselves. And war and conflicts as number one, not that surprisingly. It was the same last year, if you remember. Public health, also high. And as you can see, I've also indicated if the topic has gone up or down, namely if people are talking about it more or less than the previous year. Climate, number 3, also gone up in Norway, as you can see. And then the country's economy, so you know, the financials gone down a bit, not too much, to be very clear about that. Still a very important topic, as you can see. And then, of course, human rights at number 5 here, also rising topic compared to last year. If we dive a bit deeper into the topics that have increased the most, because that is of course something that tells us a lot about what's happening in the market and in the consumers' minds. We do see that there are some different topics here than the ones we talked about previously. Ethical issues, the topic that has risen the most among Norwegians, very interesting. Opinion polarization, this is something, to be quite clear, that is common and has risen in almost all of our markets. This is really something people worry about, that there is a polarization in society when it comes to politics and opinions. One thing also which I really excited about is really the circular economy and the fact that that has gone up, and that is also something that we see across the Nordic markets, that circular economy is a topic that is discussed more on a daily basis among consumers. Sustainable transport, quite specific, but still interesting to see that it's gone up from a lower level. And then also public health. And of course, health is always interesting because that is very much connected to me, and the ego, so to speak. So that is, of course, very, very relevant. I would say, personally, I think this is a very interesting development. And moving from what people talk about to what they think is most prioritized. Every year we look at the areas, the general sustainability areas that people prioritize the most. And what I mean by that is that these are the areas that people think companies should work with the most. And as you can see, top 3 here, a local labor conditions, so really taking care of your employees in Norway in this case. Recycling of material, number 2, as you can see, same level. And then local production, of course heavily connected to number 1. But these are the top 3, really far ahead of the rest of the areas. If we look at the rest, you can see that it's of course a sliding scale, but you do see that there are many areas that are on a similar level. What I do want to emphasize and point out here is climate, which has gone up, as you can see, plus 3 percentage points. So that's the highest increase of all these areas. Otherwise, you can see that it's fairly stable, but there is definitely a lot of focus on recycling, connected to, of course, circularity, which I mentioned before, but also the local aspects and social aspects are definitely heavy on the top of the list in this case. Before we kind of leave this overarching analysis of the market, the Norwegian market, I do want to share this indicator with you as well. This is the share of Norwegian consumers who are willing to pay, basically, or who claim that sustainability affects their purchasing decisions. Of course, we know that this is in many ways far from reality. It's easy to say one thing and do another. That's definitely the case when it comes to paying for sustainability. But what is interesting about this KPI is really that it gives us an indication of where we're heading. So as you can see, from 2013 up until 2022, we did have a positive trend. It went up slowly but steadily, going from 49 back in 13 to 70% of the population claiming that, sustainability does affect my purchasing decisions. And then we had a steep decrease last year. I don't know, some of you may have watched us then, and we did see a big decrease because Norwegians, and especially younger generations, Gen Z, millennials, the younger part of the population, really lost faith, I would say, and there was a resignation, and they also felt not only that companies and politicians weren't doing enough, but also that they themselves couldn't affect this as much as they wanted to. So there was a sense of resignation and hopefulness, I would say. And we're still there. There is no big change this year, as you can see, going from 59 to 58, so nothing much there, but definitely we're still in this valley of despair, I would say. And of course, on top of this, what we do see when we dive a bit deeper in this data is that there's a lot of confusion among people. It's very tough to know what is sustainable, what is not sustainable, what should I do. So confusion among consumers also leads to some kind of indifference and inability to actually act sustainably and, pay a bit extra or take it into account at least when they choose a certain product, for example. Now we'll move on to look at the sustainable consumer and sometimes the unsustainable consumer, but nevertheless the Norwegian consumer. And I want to start this time with some lifestyle indicators that we're actually added this year to the study. I think it's very interesting. And let's start from the bottom here, because this is really, as I've written here, consumer ambitions are high, but self-awareness is quite low. And I think it's very interesting to see that if you look at Norwegians, the Norwegian population, there are only 18% of Norwegians that actually realize that, the way I live, my current lifestyle is not sustainable. What this means is, of course, to a varying degree, but you have 82% of the population actually thinking that, they live fairly sustainably. By all means, looking around us, we know that this is not correct, this is not reality. So the self-awareness, the realization that, the way I live might not be sustainable is very, very low. And this is, of course, challenging, because how do you go about to change someone's view of their lifestyle or their lifestyle if they think it's actually quite sustainable? And moving on here, we can also see that they think that, if they are going to make some changes to their lifestyles, and they are willing, this is what you can see at the very top here, 56% of Norwegians are willing and are interested in actually living more sustainably. So that is very positive, that's hopeful. But also 47% of them claiming that, if I am to live more sustainably, this has to fit with my current lifestyle. Is this possible? Well, that's up to brands, I would say, to make sure it is. Let's have a look at our 4 behavior groups. These are 4 groups that we have been following since 2013. They are very interesting because they track what people do rather than what they say that they do. And this is a super important distinction within sustainability. Ego, as you might guess, is really focused on themselves, so to speak. So ego is not a key person driving the sustainable development. They are, however, very, very interested in what I would call national values, local production, domestic work opportunities, etc., etc. So there are definitely some aspects of it, but they can't really stand sustainability and climate as words. They're quite sensitive to it. Moderate. This is, as you might guess from the name, kind of the average consumer. They are maybe not too sustainable, but they are definitely interested in being sustainable and making sustainable choices. But they are not the kind of group that will drive that forward themselves. They look at others, and once other people start acting sustainably or doing sustainable things, then they might actually follow. The SMART behavior group. This is what many of you out there would characterize as the conscious consumer today. This is really a group that values sustainability, but also quality, service, health. And I think the key characteristic that I want to mention here is really that this is a group that can balance what's in it for them, what's good for me, but also what's in it for the world and for society and for climate, etc. So they are having kind of a sense of balancing these two important things. The dedicated sustainable behavior group. This is really the person that prioritizes sustainability number one, no matter what. Sustainability always comes first. They're knowledgeable, super interested, and also quite active around what companies do and voice their opinions quite loudly. When we look closer at the development, looking at this, I am myself reminded of the opinion polarization that I talked about previously, because as you can see here, we do have a polarization going on, I would say, when it comes to the behavior groups. You can see moderate at the top here, going from 41 to 43%. I mean, this is the biggest group. That's quite natural. Not a big change, I would say, but still increasing. I think what I really want you to look at here is really the difference now that we can see in the market between ego moving from 34 to 36 and SMART going down from 17 to 16, but also especially dedicated moving from 8 to 4. So we see a half. And again, we saw from last year, 2022 to 2023, we saw a decrease there as well. So now the dedicated part of the Norwegian population is very small, 4%. So here you have it, a gap in the market between those who are more, if I may say so, sustainably oriented, smart and dedicated, 16 plus 4, that equals 20%, and the egos, which are, sometimes absolutely into sustainability, but generally not, and they are 36%. So look at the gap here, and of course this is something we need to close and make sure that we can move in another direction in the coming years. How better to achieve behavior change and this movement from ego to moderate to smart to perhaps even dedicated than by sustainability communication? And this is where brands come in. This is where you come in to actually help drive the change and help drive the agenda. So let's have a look at sustainability communication and the insights we have around that. First of all, one thing which is super interesting, I think, is we do see a large increase in the positive attitude to sustainability communication. So what we're looking at here is basically the green ones, the share of people saying, I like sustainability communication from companies. I think this is good. I think it has a purpose, a function. And you can see that has moved from 50% last year, half of the population, to 57% this year. So we see a positive development there. But also on the negative side, we did see last year a quarter of the Norwegian population, 25%, saying that no, I do not like sustainability communication from companies. But those are actually only 70% now. So we do see a interesting movement here from more negative, or at least less positive, to actually more positives when it comes to corporate sustainability communication. Having been very positive, I also must, come with some more maybe troubling news. We do still see an even larger this year challenge when it comes to trust. As you may recall, some of you who maybe watched us last year, we did see that the share of people saying that I do generally trust companies when they talk about sustainability, that went down from 41% to 25%. So we did have a very challenging year in the Norwegian market last year. And also the negatives went from 24% to 36%. This negative development, not as steep this year, but definitely continuing a bit. So this year we actually only see 20% of Norwegians that naturally or instinctively trust what companies say when it comes to sustainability. Interesting if we try to look at this a bit from the perspective, okay, how often do consumers actually see or hear or read sustainability-oriented communication from companies and from brands? And basically what we can see here is that the more often people see and hear this, the less they trust it. So if you look at people who feel that they are on a daily basis subject to some kind of sustainability communication. You have a whopping 66% saying that this is not something that I trust. And the others who say, maybe a few times a week, there is still 45% of those saying that, I generally don't trust companies talking about this. This is, of course, fairly natural. The more you're subject to communication of some kind, the more scrutinizing you might be. It's easier for someone who is seeing it often than someone who's not seeing it often or who's seeing it never. As you can see here, it's easier for them to be a bit less trusting or even mistrusting, of course, but it's still an interesting indication to see that, the more people are subject to it, the more they tend to be mistrusting or at least not trusting what's being said. This is, of course, challenging. It's a challenging situation for companies to address this. According to consumers, what do they think are the, building blocks of trustful sustainability communication? And they got a large list of things to choose from, and the things that actually stood out, the things that people really felt that these are the topics or subjects, may I say so, that are really the foundations of credible sustainability communication are these. We have transparency, and this is, of course, something we've talked about for years. I'm actually quite tired of the word, but it is super important. Transparency is really key, and people really feel that the brands that they trust and the communication type that they trust is the kind of communication where brands actually dare to be transparent with, yes, what they do well, absolutely, but also what they do less well and what they actually do quite poorly. So the ability to actually share, both your successes but also your failures, that is really a key here, according to consumers. Clarity, what does this mean? Well, basically, the people, one of the reasons why people don't trust sustainability communication, and also that they might be, some of them at least, a bit tired of it and have a tough time looking at it or hearing it, is really that they don't understand it, because there has been a lot of lingo, sustainability lingo out there, and tough situation for people to actually understand what are they saying, what does this really mean. We're talking about net zero here, we're talking about climate neutral there, and really the clarity, the ability for a brand and a communicator to actually be very clear with, this is what we mean, this is what it actually means when we talk about a certain sustainability topic. That is also key, that people feel, okay, I really understand this, because generally consumers definitely feel that this is up to you as a brand and as a sender, not to me to understand everything. It's up to you to actually make sure that I understand it. And last but not least, evidence, being able to actually prove and show maybe numbers or maybe certificates or those kind of things, that there is actually a proof. This is not only us saying that we're doing well, we're good at this, but actually someone else saying it, and we have the proof to actually show it here. So being able to actually show the evidence and not just throwing around a bunch of nice words and pictures, etc. So transparency, being open with what you're doing well but also less well, clarity, being clear, distinctive, I would say, and evidence, showing that these are the proofs to actually make sure that we're actually telling the truth, so to speak. These are the key things to drive trust in sustainability communication. We're getting into the exciting stuff, the most sustainable brands according to consumers. So, basically Sustainable Brand Index, the ranking in Sustainable Brand Index 2024. Let's go. The Sustainable Brand Index ranking score consists of two major areas. We call them environmental responsibility and social responsibility. So these are the key aspects of the ranking score. The definition that we use are the 17 global goals for sustainable development. So for environmental responsibility, we take the environmentally related goals, and that's what we use as a definition when we ask consumers. And same for social responsibility, we take the socially related goals and put them in the definition as for social responsibility. And let's take an example. If you are a perfect brand, which means that everyone thinks you're sustainable, you would get 100% within environmental responsibility and another 100% within social responsibility. We take these percentages and we put those on top of each other. So again, a perfect brand, there's no such thing, I know, but a perfect brand would get 200%. That's the maximum score. So the score goes from 0 to 200. And this score then corresponds to a certain rank in the list that you get. Here we have the average ranking score for the Norwegian market over time. And you can clearly see here, you have the total, you have for environmental responsibility and you have for social responsibility. And you can see it's very tight, environmental, social responsibility, they're really on top of each other. So basically people have the same amount of opinions, so to speak, when it comes to both environment and social responsibility. And this is, just to give you some insights into that, very natural. People tend to have an opinion about maybe one of these, maybe, for example, in Norway as well as in other Nordic countries, people tend to have more opinions about environmental responsibility, but then they assume that, you know, if a company is, for example, doing well within environment, then they tend to just assume that they're probably doing quite well within social responsibility as well. So there is definitely a spillover effect here. But looking at the aggregated, the total score, you can see that we had fantastic development from 2013 up until 2022. And especially between 17 and 2022, the Norwegian average score was really, you know, skyrocketing, so to speak, steady development. More and more people were becoming positive to brands and companies and their sustainability work. That's essentially what we're looking at here. And then, of course, we had this huge downfall last year from 67% to 44%. Really a crack in this fantastic curve. And to remind you, we saw last year, specifically in the Norwegian market, resignation among consumers, both around what they felt that they themselves could do and the ability that they had to affect sustainability and a sustainable development, but also regarding the trust and basically what they felt that brands were doing. So we went from actually having this very positive development to super negative development because people virtually stopped thinking and even trusting that companies, brands were doing enough. I mentioned this a bit previously. It's also quite confusing. The communication level, the media spend from companies has gone down. This means that people are not subject to communication to the same extent. They are interested. We talked about that. The attitude is going up, it's positive, but they're not getting enough material, so to speak, to actually judge and assess. And I would say also that it's quite clear that, again, the confusion is high. People have a hard time understanding what is this brand doing, is that good, or should they do that instead, etc. So confusion is really kind of the enemy here as well. It's tough for people to understand what brands are doing. The ranking score in itself consists of two overarching brand parameters. Now we talked about two overarching topics. We talked about social responsibility and environmental responsibility. Now we're having two different brand parameters. This one is awareness. So basically the share of consumers, Norwegian consumers in this case, that feel that they have some kind of a knowledge or at least gut feeling around what brands are doing within sustainability. As you can see here as well, the awareness level also went up from 2013 up until 2022. We had a fairly nice curve, of course, some ups and downs in the beginning, but otherwise going in the right direction. And then we see this again, that the awareness level is going down from 72 in 2022. So basically it's 72% of the population feeling that they have some kind of a, awareness around what brands are doing within sustainability, and now we're down to 58. So this is really a key in the decrease, in the steep decrease that we see in the ranking. People are feeling that they have a tougher time. It's harder for them to really understand what brands are doing. And then, of course, awareness goes down. So this is a challenging situation. Another challenging situation is, of course, the other brand parameter, which is the attitude. So as you might guess here, what people think, am I negative? Am I neutral? Am I positive? Do I think brands are doing well? And again, we see this development, which is of course quite logical, given that this is what makes up the ranking score. But, very nice increasing curve up until 2022, and then again this steep decrease between 2022 and 2023, and that continues again this year in 2024. So not only do people think that they have a hard time understanding and knowing what you're doing within sustainability, but they're also less positive. Now it's time to not only look at the overall numbers, but actually looking at the brands and the industries specifically. So first, for 2024, let's look at the 10 top performing industries. You can see them here. These are the top-ranked industries in the eyes of consumers when it comes to sustainability. Starting from the bottom, you can see home appliances and electronics brands. Hobby and leisure, interesting. We have insurance and pension. This is also quite interesting because this is, by definition, kind of a challenging industry to be with. People don't have the highest level of engagement and interest when it comes to insurance and pension. Food, parcel and logistics. So basically, the delivery, the home delivery, something that people are at least more and more engaged in these days. Clothes and fashion brands, yes, of course, highly engaging industry, both in general but also within sustainability. And then once we ease towards the top here, we have pharmacies, we have hotels, grocery stores, and then actually I wouldn't say very, but fairly interesting, I would say, passenger transport as number one. That is kind of a difference from the other Nordic markets, at least, where we usually see grocery stores still very high here, but also food usually are the top industries, the top ranked industries. But we do have some strong passenger transport brands that we're of course going to look at in just a short while. Moving a bit from the industries to the actual brands, let's have a look at the brands that have climbed the most in Sustainable Brand Index between 2023 and 2024. And what you're looking at here is, of course, the brand and the number of positions, so the number of ranking positions that the brands have actually climbed from last year. So you can see number 10, Indiska, climbing 43 ranking spots in the ranking. You have Norröna, 47, Handelsbanken, very interesting, 47 there as well. We have Maxbo, 50 spots up, good work. Kid Interior, 51. Pierre Robert, part of Orkla, 69 spots. And then we have Norges Energi, 81. And then for the top three most climbing brands, we have Tibber, 88. Electricity and heating, you may know that. 88 spots. We have Fortum, also electricity and heating. Interesting. 97 spots. And then the brand that actually climbs the most, and this is exciting, and this is quite interesting because this is not a very consumer-facing brand, because this is a corporate brand, this is a family brand, this is Reitan, climbing 113 spots from last year. Fantastic work. When some go up, others go down, that's the way it is by nature. So let's have a look at the top 10 dropping brands. And we have some challenging here. You have Lyko dropping 61, you have S-Banken, you have Puma, XXL, Dove, Burger King, Salma, Finnsbråten. We know that there's been a challenge in the fishing industry this year. Unilever, the corporate brand, and then also another mostly corporate brand, Danone, dropping the most in the Norwegian market, 114 spots. So here you have the brands and the companies that have slightly more challenging year, I would say. As you might guess, we are getting closer to the revealing the winner, the number one in Sustainable Brand Index 2024 in Norway, and also, of course, the top 10. Before I do that, I really want to share some key insights into what are the main drivers for the brands that are doing well, because we do see that there are definitely some trends and some similarities, so to speak, when it comes to the brands either on the top of the list but also having a very positive development. So first of all, what we see this year, that it's going very well for brands that are, if I may say so, robust and safe. So traditional brands, maybe state-owned, those kind of things, brands that have been around for a long time and people really feel that they know where they have them. Again, they're very robust, and they're also providing some kind of safety and security in society. So that is definitely one of the key success factors, being that kind of brand. Another thing, being clear and being distinctive. So the brands that are distinctive and actually quite simple, there is a specific sustainability issue that they address. Not a variety, but actually, people have an easier time understanding that this is sustainable because, and then it's very clear, what it is. It might be that you address a certain sustainability topic, maybe food waste, or maybe organic food, or it might be, this is hygiene, this is, less chemicals. So really clear things that people easily can relate to. And this is, of course, connected to the fact that people are confused and they think that sustainability is tough, it's complex, and then they go to these kind of safeguards, so to speak, the brands that are distinctive and simple. And last but not least, and also a bit connected to the earlier ones, really what we see brands that are doing well are the brands that have clear passive drivers. And what I mean by this is really maybe you're not driven primarily by the fact that you're talking about sustainability or that you have clear sustainable values, but also the fact that you have passive drivers that work for you. Perhaps you belong to a positive industry, perhaps you have a certain ownership. We know, for example, cooperatives, state-owned brands, as I mentioned before, are usually viewed as more sustainable. Maybe you have a long history. Those kind of things are not necessarily always connected to sustainability, but things that people are viewing as sustainable. So if you have these kind of clear passive drivers, then you're in luck this year, because that is clearly driving the way people look at brands from a sustainability perspective. Now it's time to have a look at the top 10 in Sustainable Brand Index 2024 for Norway. We are looking at the brands in Norway that consumers perceive to be most sustainable currently. Number 10, Vinmonopolet. Very good, well done. This is a brand climbing over the past few years in the ranking, and now they're actually on the top 10, so congratulations, well deserved. Number 9, we have a classic one here, Swedish brand, IKEA. We have Ruter, number 8. And then, of course, another very, very classic, traditional Norwegian brand, number 7, we have Tine, the dairy. Let's take number 6. Here we find Flytoget. Very interesting to reveal that number 5 this year in Norway is actually Vy. So here we have a switch in the industry winner, you might see here. Vy actually bypassing Flytoget. Number 4, now we're getting close to the top. Number 4, we have Q-mejerierna. Yes, so we have 2 dairies on top 10. And number 3, now we're on the podium, so to speak. Number 3, we have Posten Norge. Posten, well done. Number 2, and this is actually a new brand in Sustainable Brand Index 2024, Englamark. This is a brand doing well in all the markets, and now also in Norway. Very well. All right, here you have it, the top 10, but of course missing one vital piece. I'll give you a few moments to think, okay, who is number 1? What brand is number 1? The most sustainable brand, according to Norwegian consumers in 2024, is, once again, for the 3rd year, Finn.no. Well done, Finn.no, and I mean, connecting to what I said before, circular economy, of course, key trend in the market that is super positive for Finn.no, and Finn.no also doing great in how they communicate and how they actually make Norwegians be part of a circular economy. So again, well deserved.
Hei, jeg heter Anja og er bærekraftsansvarlig i Schibsted Marketplaces. På vegne av alle de fine folka i Finn må jeg si tusen takk for tildelingen av Sustainable Brand Index-prisen. Dette er 3. året på rad vi får denne prisen, og det er ganske overveldende. Og det vil virkelig motivere oss til å fortsette å jobbe med å innovere for bærekraftige løsninger. Jeg vil gjerne fortelle litt om hva vi har gjort det siste året i Finn, så dere ser utviklingen. Og vi har for eksempel på Finn-torget sett en dobling av antall bruktsalg det siste året. På nybrukt elektronikk har vi også hatt veldig god vekst, og vi har skalert dette til det svenske markedet. Og i jobbmarkedsplassen vår har vi hatt stor fokus på mangfold og inkludering i arbeidsmarkedet. Så der skal vi i gang med et nytt konsept som heter «Ikke ansett deg selv». Så igjen, tusen takk for tildelingen av prisen. Det setter vi veldig, veldig stor pris på.
Publishing the ranking is not properly done without looking at the industry winners, of course. So here you have the industry winners for 2024. I'll let you have a look. It's a lot to take in. Some of you may be shouting right now and being happy. We do see that Vinmonopolet, that I previously mentioned on top 10, are going to the top in grocery stores. I know, is it a grocery store, but you know, close enough, so to speak. So they claim that title. KLP goes to the top, passes Gjensidige in insurance and pension this year. We also see Coop going to the top in consumer goods corporations, as we call it. Englamark being a new brand, coming in as number 2 in the total ranking and number 1 in the food industry. We have Vy bypassing Flytoget that I mentioned in passenger transport. We also have Thun Hotels going to the top in hotel industry. Well done. Mester Grønn, new brand in Norway, new brand in the ranking this year, taking the top position in hobby and leisure. Hurtigruten, taking the top in travel and tourism. We have a new brand here, I think, Å Energi, in electricity and heating. So there we have a change in the top in that industry as well. Kaffebrenneriet reclaiming the top ranking in restaurants, cafes and takeaway from McDonald's, who took it last year. We have Intersport in clothes and fashion stores. And last but not least, Miele in home appliances and electronics brands. So congratulations to all of the industry winners, of course, but maybe a bit extra to the new ones. Well done. Sustainable Brand Index is more than a ranking, so much more. We have the largest database in Europe of sustainability insights. We have 3 different types of reports. We have what we call a data report, we have an analysis report, and we have a strategy report. All of these are made to give you insights into how you're perceived, the reasons behind that, consumer behavior and how to change that, and of course recommendations on how to go on and how to build a sustainable brand and communicate sustainability in the best and most credible and effective way possible. Erika Söderlund, you're the communications manager at Circle K in Sweden.
That's correct.
You were actually the first company to jump on this possibility to try the perception versus performance analysis. How come you took this decision?
Well, we like to be early adopters, of course, but first and foremost, we don't like to speculate. So we wanted to really grasp the current state of the company when it comes to performance and perception. And as we really like the Sustainable Brand Index and it's given us a lot of insights, we thought this might actually be the thing for us to know our current state.
Do you have any learnings from this process? Hopefully you have. Something that you learned along the way from the analysis?
Well, we've learned a lot of things. We've been using this, the material, the analysis broadly in the organization, both myself and the sustainability manager and also the management team. So it was actually the foundation for starting the work with our new sustainability strategy. So it's given us good insights, things that we thought we knew, but now we have them validated, and also a lot of new insights that we did not know for a fact. So it's been very good for us, helpful.
Great. And maybe you have some kind of an insight or something you learned along the way that you could share with us?
Yeah, it was, we talk a lot about EV or the electrification of vehicles, and we know we're doing good. We're moving in a fast pace, but to see that our performance and the perception from consumers that we are in the pole position, that was great to see. That was a good receipt on what we're doing is actually gaining knowledge. And also we found out that we need to actually pick up our pace in certain areas, that we're not transparent enough because people don't know what we're doing. So that was also a good learning.
Erika Söderlund from Circle K, thank you so much for sharing these insights with us.
Thank you for bringing us the insights.
Here are some examples of what our clients say, the clients that actually choose to take part of their reports. This can help you define your sustainability communication, of course also spot areas where you need to improve. A lot of our clients I know use this material for their annual business strategy, to prioritize, to make the right decisions, to choose the right path and what to focus on, and of course again to plan for communications over the coming years. So if you're interested in this, reach out and we will tell you much more about what we have for you in our vast database of sustainability insights. Now it's time to wrap up this webinar. I want to mention 4 key things. First of all, the fact that sustainability is resilient. Sustainability is standing its ground. And what I mean by this is that, as I mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, we do have a lot of things going on in the world around us. We do have worry around war and conflicts. We do have worry around the economy, the cost of living, etc. But still, over the past 4 years, we see that sustainability is clearly a big part of the conversation, and it's not moving, it's not deviating in the same way as it has done before when there are large things happening around us in the world. So sustainability is resilient. It's a part of the new normal for consumers, and that's great. Consumer ambitions are high. Yes, people want to be sustainable. They want to do more, they want to live more sustainably, but at the same time, they also sometimes think, or a lot of them think, 82% if you recall, think that they're actually being quite sustainable. Their lifestyle is quite sustainable. So here we have a gap, a discrepancy between those things. We have to make people also realize the fact that, maybe the way we're living at the moment is not that sustainable, and that's the reason we have to change it. The confusion around consumers, people think that it's tough to know what is sustainable, what isn't sustainable. Is that a good brand? Is that not a good brand, etc.? And that leads to a drop in perception. People have less opinions, they have a tougher time forming opinions around the way you're communicating or the way you're actually talking about sustainability, and also the fact that you are communicating less. We do see less media spend overall, and that is of course again affecting sustainability communication as well. And these things, confusion and less communication from brands, is leading to this drop in perception that we see. We see that awareness is going down, we see that attitude is going down. On the same topic, confusion, but rather the complexity. So complexity, sustainability being a complex thing, as we all know, and that is really becoming very, very clear for consumers, and that makes it tough for them. So complexity is really driving a need for simplicity, or at least clarity, distinctiveness. So that is what people are looking for in brands these days. Can you be very clear about what you're doing well and how you're driving change and how you're driving your sustainable development? Then you will be successful. Time flies when you're having fun. The official report from Sustainable Brand Index 2024 is out. You choose Sustainable Brand Index in the menu and your country, and you download the official report to see how your brand performed this year. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions or want to talk to us, don't hesitate to reach out.